Yeah?
So it's a sort of confluence also both of the mask and performance and history, which allows one a sort of freedom of movement. Just putting on the mask or the mud or whatever it is allows
Absolutely.
oneself
And
to
that's
move in history
exactly.
and use performance for that
And
movement.
there's a deep spiritual thing happening because once you put on the mud, particularly in Jouvay, the person,
Disappears.
and it's interesting because persona is mask,
Right.
an image of me, right? That's what
Well,
persona
image of
means
something.
in the original drama. The person disappears.
Right.
Now, once the person disappears, what comes forward is the essence of being. And the essence of being is something we all share. And that essence of being immediately is foregrounded or is in front of the background of the big universe. And right away, there's a universality to there's a feeling of being part of something big that comes right in the ritual of Jouvay. And one could move that in so many different ways to understand what Jouvay process is. I mean, Jouvay process very simply is a process of awakening that is going on and on and on all the time. I mean, there are all kinds of other definitions that I've developed for different situations, but really
Jammed consciousness.
Jammed consciousness is what comes out of, first to begin, you got to go back and say, well, so what is Jamet? Jamet, the French Creole word coming from Diamet, the people below the line of social respectability, the underworld, the demi-mode, and you know, all the things that they did. They were the matadors, they were the calypso, and they were the stick fighters, they were the supposedly prostitutes. What happened after the 19th century, late 19th century, Jamet carnival situation, as we go into the 50s, Jamet become just prostitute women, but before that, it was a whole culture. The interesting thing about the Jamet, as far as I understand it, or perspective that I would throw on it, is that where were these people going? Where were they going? What was their past? What was their future? So they were in a kind of philosophical position where they had to be of the now. There's nowness. I mean, there are all kinds of New Age spiritual teachers now saying, oh, it's about the now, it's about the now. Performance is always about the present. I argue that it's only people out of that situation could have created the pan. You can't create a pan and say, well, this is going to rival piano. There's no way, right? So you're forced out of that Jamet situation. You're forced to be yourself on the now, in the present, which is what all performance is. Out of that, what you have the pan. But out of that, you also have a belligerence. You have a defensiveness, which is a Jamet consciousness. So that on the one hand, it's creative, right? On the other hand, so on the one hand, it's resistance. On the other hand, it's affirming, right? It's a paradox, complete paradox, right? Because the spiritual teachers and so on would tell you that you accept, you don't resist.
You get rid of the ego first.
Exactly,
Yeah.
no, but
Jamet, make sure the
well,
ego is there.
have to work with the ego.
Yeah.
Have to work with the ego because they also say that there's good and bad ego. Now, the thing about Jamet consciousness is that Jamet consciousness is a high consciousness because it brings you to that level of creativity. It brings you to that level of exhilaration. But it's not full consciousness. It's not what I call, it's not full emancipation. It's not transcendental emancipation. It is a threshold. So that if you, in the play Jean and Dinah, for instance, what Dinah is trying to get Jean to see is to go past that. Accept the fact that you threw the bottle. Accept the fact that you were in the clash, you were in the big fight. Accept the fact that the bottle blinded me and all of that, and go past it. Move from Jamet consciousness to real consciousness, to what I call transcendental consciousness. So Jamet consciousness is an important threshold. And I see many people who have embodied Jamet consciousness. When I look at Jeffrey Holder on the world stage, yeah, but you see, this is a difficult one, to move from Jamet consciousness to full consciousness, because in a sense, there's something that you give up. There's a state of grace that you cross once you come through all that defensiveness and so on. One could say the pan movement is struggling with that. They caught the Jamet consciousness, they fought and so on, and now they're doing the panorama thing, and they're in a state, how are they going to find full and real liberation, having understood that it was that belligerence, that use of the ego, that defensiveness, that fight, that business where they would mash up the pan if they had to then get to the next stage. And that is what is important in the whole Jouvay process. But emancipation is an important organizing principle to understand all of this. And what I like about it is the fact that it is secular. We're not talking religion. You don't have to believe anything to grasp this, and you don't have to be trained either.
Well, you had to believe in Jouvay.
No, you have to believe in awakening.
Yes.
Because what has happened, for instance, I worked with some Indian people in Leeds a few years ago. And what they did, they started dancing Durga and all kind of things, but Trinidadian dancing, sailor and so on. But what they did was they related it to something they knew, because all what we are talking about here, they are analogs in other cultures. I teach American students and I say, okay, so I'm not asking you to be Trinidadian, I'm not to believe in anything I'm saying. I'm not asking you to accept anything, but is there anything here that is sending you off in any way to grasp and understand some analog from your own situation? And that is what the Jouvay process is. It throws you back on your own situation.
Right. I have to take a break, Tony. We'll be right back with Eye to Eye with Tony Hall. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Eye with Tony Hall. We just can't stop talking, so we're moving forward. Tony, we only have another 2 segments, and I want to try to get all sorts of things into it because we're going here. So I think I've got an idea of the Jamet consciousness and Jouvay process and transcendental performance, emancipation, and so on. And I hope people out there get some advice.
No wonder they don't understand my plays, right?
No, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
To me, your plays distinguish themselves because they allow voices to be heard that aren't normally heard directly in the culture, or not in the culture, in the formal theater culture. If they're heard having been written and mediated by some consciousness that is not necessarily the Jamet consciousness.
A kind of agenda.
Right. Yeah. So what I find by watching your stuff is that we're hearing voices that you hear on the street, but you're hearing them done in a way because of the artistry of the playwriting and so on, the play construction or the drama construction. We're hearing something coherent and hopefully will lead us to some sort of transcendence. But talk a bit about this bringing of the voice of the street and the voice of people who aren't normally represented in it. I mean, Gin and Diner, for example, is typical, but you did the Red House,
Red House,
and you've done other things.
The thing is this. 1838 was emancipation. Right. But it seemed to me, it has always struck me that we then talk about it like if there was this freedom. We could now do what we want. The fact remains that we were let into a world that was going to be enslaved in another way. It was still a capitalist world. Right. It was so that in a sense that emancipation, though important, was a kind of a trick, right? So like Selwyn Ryan says, you move from chattel slavery to wage slavery, and it's always worried me that the sort of black consciousness responded to these things as though it was, if only we could live in the world like white people, everything going to be all right. You see, it's still behind the 8 ball. Yeah, but it seemed to me that, and Marcus Garvey said it, that there are 2 stages of emancipation. One was the chattel slavery, but emancipate yourself from mental slavery, that is stage 2, and that is the hardest one. And that one was not just talking to, sure, Marcus Garvey, through Bob Marley's voice, is talking to black people specifically, but it seemed to me that everybody, particularly in the capitalist system, have to emancipate themselves from mental slavery. And then I got to understand that it's not just in the capitalist system. In the evolutionary impulse of mankind, I think therefore I am, is mental slavery. Yeah? So.
Oh, why? Sorry. I think therefore I am is mental slavery.
It's mental slavery because, and it's mental slavery particularly to us, of our understanding, because thought locks you into a system of being preoccupied with the past and then the future and not in the present. As Jamets, we are about the present. As performers, we are about the present, right?